The Transformation Table, a nonprofit organization that is creating space to connect with our common humanity, is holding a community dinner on Friday, June 20th, in honor of the Mother Emanuel victims and survivors. Today, I talk one-on-one with the founder and curator of Transformation Table, Tina Singleton, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, sponsored by Tom McQueenie State Farm. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Tina Singleton, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups for this particular interview, sponsored by Tom McQueenie State Farm.
Thank you, Quintin. It's really nice to see you again, and I'm really happy to be here.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. Needless to say, you're the founder and creator of Transformation Table, which mission is to create space among strangers of different backgrounds, perspectives, and life experiences to come together, see, hear, and understand one another, to find those little points of connection that allows each of us to see each other's humanity. So tell me, Ms. Tina, what's new, what's now with the Transformation Table?
Great. As you know, we're coming up on the 10th anniversary of the mass shooting at Mother Emanuel. And as they do every year, there is a schedule of events for the commemoration that is 10 days from June 17th to the 28th. And this year we are honored to be a part of those events. And on June 20th, we will be hosting a community dinner at Joseph Fields Farm on Johns Island, along with Gullah Geechee chef Gullah Geechee chef BJ Dennis, yes. And the Cocktail Bandits will be joining us as well.
Oh, I love Tanika and Johnny, and of course I've had BJ on Quintin's Close-Ups as well.
Oh yes, he's an amazing ambassador for Gullah Geechee cuisine and culture.
Oh, absolutely, you're absolutely right about that. So, how does Transformation Table meet the 10-year remembrance of the Mother Emanuel tragedy?
Well, with the dinner, what we're hoping to do, and we do the same with all of our dinners, but for this dinner, it's an opportunity for the community to come together, to share a meal, to reflect and celebrate and honor the legacies of the Emanuel Nine. Our dinners focus on people getting to, meet each other, meet your neighbor, share a meal. And since the theme of this year's commemoration is unity in the community, it's right up our alley because that's what Transformation Table is all about. So we're just really excited to be able to provide an opportunity for people to come together and share a meal and to celebrate the Emanuel Nine and our community as well.
You talk about the community, Ms. Tina. What is the unity in the community 10 years later after this tragedy?
That's a good question. I think that's a question that's going to be asked throughout the entire time that the community is celebrating. I think it's an opportunity for all of us to think about and reflect where we are. What has happened in the last 10 years. In the community and where do we need to go moving forward?
How do you move forward with unity in the community?
I think we have to talk to each other. And because we've gotten so far away from that, I think we're becoming more and more increasingly isolated. Because we're on social media all the time, we're on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok and all of that, and I think we're losing that face-to-face connection and that ability to talk to each other and actually, more importantly, to listen to each other. And so anytime that we can provide an opportunity for people to listen, to understand, and not to respond is a way forward.
What are those other connections, Ms. Tina, that we're missing when it comes to unity and listening to others? Because as you mentioned, social media has zapped a lot of that away from people.
Yes. I think it's creating space for people to come together. It doesn't have to be complicated. I think we tend to make things a lot more difficult than we need to. It doesn't have to be, it can be just, sharing a meal with a neighbor, talking to your neighbor outside the front door. They don't have to be complicated and grandiose opportunities. It's really just having the compunction to and the willingness to talk to your neighbor, to talk to someone maybe that has a different opinion than you do, and being willing to listen. So it doesn't have, I think, like I said, I think we make things a lot more complicated than we need to. We can connect with each other very simply.
What are those other things that you want people to connect with when it comes to unity?
I want people to, and it's going to sound cheesy, but I say it all the time, but I want people to understand that we're more alike than we are different. And when we talk to each other, and for us, that's why it's so important to hear each other's stories, because by doing that, we do find those little points of connection that makes us go, oh, I have something in common with this person that maybe I never thought I would. So for example, at one of our dinners, the first thing that we ask usually at our dinners is, what's your favorite food memory? And we ask that as an icebreaker, and you find out so much information just by asking that very, very simple question, right? And so, we asked that question, and at this particular dinner, there were 4 people out of 10 that had been raised in single parent households. And that's a point of connection right there. There was somebody else that, through having conversations, there was somebody that, had a particular food memory that was very similar to someone else's, So again, I think it's through sharing who we are and being willing to talk to each other. That's where it all starts. Talking and listening. That's where it starts, because you can't talk about the heavy stuff. You can't talk about anything else that needs to be discussed until you can connect, because people won't listen to each other if we don't connect to each other.
You're right about that. And I'm thinking back to a favorite food memory of mine growing up. And I had a breakfast, lunch, dinner when we didn't when we didn't have the means to get to eat other things. But and it's sitting in the refrigerator right now. I hope I can eat it tonight. But it's eggs and rice with ketchup.
I love it. Mine was peanut butter balls that I used to make with my mother.
Yes. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really, really amazing.
Yep.
Speaking of which, Ms. Tina, over the past couple of years since you've been doing Transformation Table, which dinner has changed you personally?
Oh gosh. Honestly, the stories that come out of the dinners is what touches me, because sometimes, you think, oh, a dinner, what difference is that going to make? Right? Because it's a very simple thing. And, it's one dinner, how much impact can one dinner have? But, we have one of the dinners that I think touched me. A lot of them do, they all do, but in different ways. But one that touched me was, we recently had a dinner where there was an undocumented guest at the table, and he was sharing his experience. He's, applying for his green card and everything, but he was just sharing his experience of being undocumented. And afterwards, when I was speaking to one of the guests and asked her how her experience was, she said to me, I never thought about immigration until I heard this person's story. And once I heard his story and what his life experience was, I now look at the issue of immigration in a different way, because she now has a personal connection to that issue. And there's now a human face on this issue of immigration. We had another guest that is a member of the LGBTQ community, and she was talking at the table about how her very religious and conservative mother she doesn't have a relationship with anymore. And there was a minister at the table, and she was a little concerned about, what this minister might think. And this minister actually ended up being really supportive and hearing her story. And they ended up having this really interesting conversation about religion. So, there's many, examples of how, again, hearing each other's stories, people becoming more compassionate towards each other, people becoming more empathetic towards each other, and people, people just being more compassionate towards each other, because we need more compassion in the world, and we need more understanding. And again, it starts with that talking to each other and listening to each other.
I have to ask you a simplistic question, Ms. Tina, and I'm going to be very direct with this. But why are people so afraid to talk to one another these days?
Because of the climate, the people are becoming increasingly isolated. And I think the climate right now and I think it's almost, to me, it almost feels like you're almost dared not to talk to each other, because I think people have gotten so far away from each other that when we approach each other, I think we're almost poised and maybe ready for some kind of confrontation or some kind of negative interaction. And I think that if we can get back to a place of being willing, and again, it's about being willing as well, and opening your heart, opening yourself up to listening to someone else. We have to have that will has to be there.
What is that one issue that you hope
Choice.
Yeah, absolutely. What's that one issue that you hope will be that will be a human facing bigger issues to come?
Oh my gosh. There's so many issues. We stay apolitical, and I know sometimes that can be difficult in the current environment, but for me, it's about humanity, and it's about us seeing each other as human beings and not as issues or a member of a particular group or an issue. And I think that what's happening in the world now, we know that there's an assault on the LGBTQ community. There was just a shooting that was towards Jewish people. There's a lot of anti going on right now. And I think that, again, we have to be able to see each other as individuals. And
Yes.
we have to be able to take each other as one person, not a whole representative of a whole group or an issue. We have to be able to see each other as individuals and look at each other as such.
As such.
It's tough. It's not easy. It's not easy, but we have to have the will. If we want this country to change, if we want our communities to be more united, to be more unified, we have to have the will to do it.
Yes,
and we
ma'am.
have to say, I'm going to do it. And you start with one person. That's all you need to do.
And you talk about that will. Where is that access? Where is it?
You start with someone who's willing to talk to you. You can't change, you can't change everybody, right? You can't change everybody's mind. So honestly, start with the lowest hanging fruit. If your neighbor's willing to have a conversation with you, have a conversation with your neighbor. If there's somebody at your church that you've never spoken to, go speak to that person go speak to that fellow congregant in your church. If you get coffee every day at your favorite cafe, hey, maybe say hi to your barrister. And, it's just, yeah,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
know I sound like a broken record, but
Oh
honestly,
no.
we just make it too complicated. We make it too complicated. And we have to say to ourselves, I don't want to live in an environment of hate and isolation and negativity. I want to be a positive change. So let me go out and start with one person. Imagine if everyone in the community, right, talked to one person that they didn't know and heard their story. What do you think would happen? We would become more connected. Again, we would become more empathetic. We would become more compassionate. We would be able to maybe walk in someone else's shoes a little bit easier.
You're right. This might be an awkward question, but what story do you want to hear next at the table?
Ooh, that's a good one. I've been thinking about that with the dinner that we have coming up, around the commemoration. And for me, I think I would be really interested to know, again, just based on, the commemoration and what it means and the significance of it, is what can we as individuals do to make our community better and to make our community more unified? Because it starts with each of us, right? So I think for me, I'm really curious to see what people are thinking, and also too how people are feeling about the 10th anniversary. This is a really significant time, for the Charleston community, and I just kind of want to know how people are feeling. It's like, how is everybody feeling about this 10th anniversary and what's happened and how we move forward? So that's what I would like to that I'd like to have conversation about.
And speaking of conversations, everyone's talking about your dinner coming up soon here in a couple of days. And I know that you all have some good news. So tell me about that.
Well, we're full.
Right.
But people who would still like to participate in Transformation Table have an opportunity to do so. We're going to be planning more dinners after the June event. And so people who would still like to attend our dinners are more than welcome to. We have a payment model where you pay what your situation can allow. So there's no barrier for anyone in the community to come to one of our dinners. And we'd love to have them. So, we would love for people to go to our website, transformationtable.org, sign up for our newsletter so you can keep abreast of when our dinners are happening. And yeah, we'd love to have people around the table.
Who else in the Low Country do you want to have around the table to talk about these issues such as race and education and immigration?
Well, what happens with the conversations around the table is, because people ask me a lot, well, what do you talk about? What's the topic? Right? And because we're used to that, right? We're used to knowing what we're going to talk about. And for me, my feeling is that if you tell people what the topic is going to be, you're already going to come with your perspective about that topic. You already know in your head what you want to say. So you're going to be listening and interacting with people in a very different way, right? Because you're going to be waiting for an opportunity to say what you think about that particular topic. So we do have guiding questions and things like that. But really, what happens, and that's why I like it so much, is that we talk about whatever that particular group of people, of 10 people around the table, want to end up talking about, and that needs to be discussed with that particular group of people, because every group is every table is different. They're comprised of different community members. So, we curate the table in such a way that allows for those differences and similarities to come up, and for people to find those points of connection. So I'm a little bit of a social engineer in
Yes.
that, in that respect. But honestly, it's always been like that. And that's one thing that I've really appreciated, is that, whatever needs to be discussed among that particular group of people is what's discussed. And it never fails, people, whatever needs to be talked about, that's what the topics end up being about.
Yo, that's amazing. I'm going to go and ask an off the beaten topic question, Miss Tina.
Okay.
But which one of the survivors from Mother Emanuel do you want to bring to the table?
Which one of the survivors do we want to have? God, I'd love to have them all. I'd love to have them all. I would love to have them all. I think, with this commemoration and with every commemoration, I think we remember both the Emanuel 9 and the survivors, right? Because I don't know what it would even be like to have to continue on when you have experienced something so tragic, and so impactful. So, I would love, love to have, I would love to have them. I'd love to have them. And I think we need to remember them, just as we remember the Emanuel 9, we remember the survivors as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Tina Singleton with Transformation Table, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups for this interview, sponsored by Tom McQueenie at State Farm.
Thank you so much. It was always great to talk to you, and I appreciate the time.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome.